The traitor was inside Dorian's own family. Everyone thought Costello had simply found a weakness, but the attack on Ravenshade was too precise. Someone knew the guards, the schedule, the blind spots, and Seraphina's movements. Then Marcus uncovered the truth. The cousin, Dorian's own cousin, had sold them out for money. He hadn't just betrayed the Empire. He had delivered a pregnant woman and an unborn child straight into enemy hands. Let us hit pause right here and examine this scene together, because the tension is literally the charts. Picture Seraphina standing behind her Mafia bod's husband in their dark penthouse. The whole place reeks of stale cigars and dirty money. She watches the man she married treat her like an absolute object just to get a laugh out of his shady crew. Does he defend her? Not for a single second. But here is the massive plot twist. In her pocket, she is gripping a positive pregnancy test. That little stick shatters the last bit of hope she had left. She drops the silver tray and walks out into the freezing October night. Look, the biggest just lesson you can learn here is that true survival does not start with some dramatic screaming match. It starts with a dead, silent, permanent exit. You really have to see how this underworld operates to believe it. The sheer wealth stuffed into this penthouse is so suffocating it practically crushes your lungs. Seraphina drifts through these cold marble hallways with a tray, giving off absolute ghost vibes. She drops off straight whiskey because Dorian is the ultimate control freak. In the parlor, Dorian uses that terrifyingly calm voice that makes grown mobsters sweat, while his right-hand enforcer barks like a rabid dog. It is the classic Mafia setup. The heavy muscle screams so the boss never gets his hands dirty. But listen up, the life lesson here is so hard. If you stick around in a wildly toxic environment long enough, you start believing the poison you are breathing is just normal. Get out while you can. The map pans to two absolute thugs lounging around, sweating out cheap malice and overpriced cologne. One of them out loud calls marrying Seraphina a brilliant strategic move. In the hallway, you can practically see her freeze dead in her tracks. They are hyping up her clean background like it is just a convenient shield to dodge the cops. Then Marcus drops an ugly laugh and literally calls her a breeding man. Just completely vile stuff. But look closely at our girl. Her hands do not even twitch. She holds that heavy crystal tray perfectly steady. It is heartbreaking, but she finally learned the darkest rule of dealing with a predator. The second you show them you are hurt, they will just cut at you deep. Never give a toxic person the sick satisfaction of seeing your tears. Now catch the arrogant smirk creeping onto Dorian's face. He talks about his wife like she is just a reliable piece of property. He brags to his crew about how quiet she is and how he skips all the messy relationship drama. Just outside those doors, Seraphina's line complaint completely shuts down. Her heart turns into a block of ice. She always knew this marriage was a shady survival deal her desperate dad signed in blood. But there is a huge difference between knowing you are a pawn and hearing the guy you live with. You can build up all of a transaction, or build the mental armor you want, but hearing the ugly truth out loud will absolutely break you. But honestly, that same bitter pain is exactly the reality check you need to finally wake up and change your life forever. Stick with me here, because this is where the heartbreak kicks in. Like many people in awful situations, she was secretly clinging to the hope that if she played the perfect wife, he might eventually love her. Hearing that cold laugh nukes that deluge forever. She steps into the room and not a single guy flinches. Dorian stays glued to his chair, pulling a petty power move to remind her who is boss. She hands out the drinks totally numb. keeping her eyes locked on the floor because making eye contact with these wolves is a fatal error. He just waves her off like a stray dog. The brutal life lesson we all have to face is that trying to love a toxic person into finally treating you right is a desperately rigged game you will always lose. The camera tracks her walk down this empty corridor. She passes the laundry room where she used to hide and cry over being completely invisible. She drifts past the staff quarters, where everyone pretends they cannot hear her marriage falling apart. Finally, she hits her bedroom, pulls that pregnancy test, and just stares at it under the dim light. 2 pink lines. A literal ticking time bomb of new life. She sits frozen until the sun goes down, processing the madness. By midnight, she walks right past the diamonds and designer bags. Instead, she grabs a cheap, beat-up canvas duffel. The truth of life is that the flashy things we think make us rich are usually the exact chains keeping us hostage. She is ditching those golden handcuffs to finally breathe some real air. She refuses to pack a single item that mob boss bought her. The penthouse is completely dead silent. 2 floors down, Dorian is chilling in his office, way too busy admiring his own ego to notice his wife Wise plotting an escape. Slowly, she slides the massive diamond ring off her finger and drops it stand on the nightstand. There is no dramatic monologue here. Nobody is smashing expensive plates against the wall. She literally just walks out the front door and leaves the whole Guild Age wide open. Honestly, that is the ultimate flex. Real freedom comes from realizing your toxic captor does not even deserve the basic courtesy of a goodbye. Just walk away. Down in the lobby runs straight into Miguel, the odd guy. He is totally shook to see his Mafia boss's wife sneaking out alone. She forces her racing hard to calm it down and plays it cool, whispering she just needs fresh air. Because Serafina was literally a nightmare building who treat her like an actual human being. He gives a knowing nod and unlocks the doors. The second the freezing window face her spirit reboots, she drops cash for a ride to the north side, dodging all the cameras. She is tracking down her fierce aunt, the only relative who never sold out the mob. It just proves a massive life lesson. Treating people right when you have zero to gain is the exact thing that might save your life when the whole world falls apart. Let us appreciate the intense weight of this moment. Her Aunt Marielle cracks the door open and instantly spots the terror in Serafina's eyes. They head straight to the kitchen. No cold marble here, just a genuinely safe vibe. Marielle is a boss, so grill her with 50 panic questions. She could not care less about Dorian's Mafia status. Serafina drops the massive bomb right on the table. She is having a does not even blink. She just calmly asks if the husband knows. Serafina grips her mug, admitting she has no grand master plan. She just had to stop feeling like hunted prey. Listen, sometimes the bravest thing you can possibly do is admit you are completely lost. And just trust the rare people who actually want you to survive. Her brain is totally short-circuiting, but she finally forces the reality out loud. She needs to drop off the grid. When Marielle asks where she will go, Serafina brings up this old family cabin buried deep in the northern woods. Dorian absolutely hated that place. He used to mock her constantly and demanded she sell the useless dirt. But refusing to sign over that plot was the single time she ever defied him. Sure, the roof is probably collapsing and there are no security cameras, but tonight, it is a ticket out of the underworld. The incredible life lesson here is to never let anyone strip the very last piece of who you are. That tiny, surfacely useless thing you refuse to surrender is exactly the foundation you will need to rebuild your entire life from scratch. Marielle leans in with a heavy reality check. A ruthless mafia don like Dorian will never let his prized possession walk away. He is going to hunt her. But Serafina looks her aunt dead in the eye, and for the first time we see a real spark of fire. The shivering victim is gone. Marielle sees the shift, pulls into a hug, and tells her to find a clean lawyer. The toxic person off completely is your only path, Tai. Meanwhile, back at the penthouse, Dorian sleeps soundly, completely clueless his world just shifted. The most pathetic part? He only notices she is gone the next morning spa because nobody brought his black coffee. It is a harsh truth where people treat you like a mindless, they never actually miss you as a person. They just miss the chores you did for them. Let us study how an absolute responsibility reacts when his favorite toy goes missing. Dorian is not pacing, fleeing the floors, worried about his wife. He is just extremely annoyed. To his twisted brain, running away is just a frustrating glitch in his preferred tea. She is throwing a tantrum and will come crawling back by lunch. But by noon, when she ignores his calls, his massive, fragile ego begins to shatter. It is not sadness creeping in, it's a pure, venomous rage. The sun sets. He storms into the master bedroom, spots that glittering wedding ring dumped on the nightstand, and absolutely loses his mind. He screams for his enforcer to find her. This proves the life lesson. Toxic abusers never grieve losing you as a human being. They only grieve losing their absolute control. Look at this absolute train wreck of a mob boss. Dorian is on the phone with his top muscle, waving off his runaway wife like she just took a wrong turn at the store. Click. Call ends. Suddenly, his massive office feels like a freezing prison cell. He stares at her discarded diamond ring on the desk, and the dude completely short-circuits. He cannot even picture her real smile. He built this ruthless mafia, finding feelings made him weak, but
now, the quiet girl he treated like a total NP just nuked his entire
reality. Here is the real lesson, guys. You can build the thickest walls to keep the haters out, but eventually, you just lock yourself inside, entirely alone. The king of the underworld is literally suffocating over a girl he never even bothered to look at. Let us pause the frame right here and look at this together. You and I, we are watching a massive ego crash and burn in real time. Dorian stands in his wife's empty room, and it finally hits him. He knows zero about the woman he married. He holds this expensive ring, remembering he paid some random assistant to buy it. He pockets the ice, completely clueless about the absolute hurricane heading his way. Meanwhile, weaker Serafina, miles away, flipping the script on her life. She sits across from Nasilis Merrick, a heavyweight lawyer known for dragging folks out of the deep end. Her power move teaches us a huge lesson about survival. Sometimes the absolute bravest thing you can do is just sit down, look someone in the eye, and ask for help to fight back. The vibe in the coffee shop scene is super gritty and low-key. Silas leans back, his veteran eye scanning all the invisible damage Serafina carries. When she stops talking, he does not sugarcoat a single thing. He asks her straight up if she is ready to burn her mafia marriage to the ground. You catch that tiny split second of hesitation in her eyes, that messy trauma bond trying to drag her back under. But then, pure steel, she is playing for keeps now to protect her unborn baby. Silas hits her with the brutal math of fighting a literal apex predator like Dorian. Her old family money is not going to cut it. It is a harsh lesson about how the world actually works. A little bit of cash might buy you a temporary hideout, but against a monster with endless resources, it only buys you borrowed time. Watch her body language totally flip right here. This is the exact second Sarafina wakes up from the bad dream. She realizes the boss's power trip only works if she stays quiet, and she is done playing the silent ghost. She is not even looking for petty revenge, which honestly makes her the most dangerous player on the board. She just wants out. Silas sees that cold fire and agrees to build her legal defense, but warns her straight up. When a mafia tyrant loses his favorite toy, things get incredibly messy. She retreats to a massive, creepy stone mansion surrounded by dead weeds. But honestly, it teaches us a massive lesson about perspective. For the first time in her life, this freezing stone house is a total, because she is finally the one holding all the literal keys. The camera sweeps over the giant estate. This dusty old mansion is basically her right now, totally frozen and needing a serious reboot. But she puts in the work. She brings in a sweet housekeeper and a chill guy to fix the yard. Just the basic routine of chopping firewood and getting the heat running totally resets her brain. It is a super real lesson for anyone hitting rock bottom. Sometimes the best way to heal is just doing the quiet work of getting through the day. Well, she gets exactly 2 weeks of peace before chaos returns. On a freezing afternoon, a blacked-out sedan rolls up her driveway. Peeking through the window, she sees Dorian step out. The big bad mafia boss looks completely clueless. Standing in a front yard, his dirty syndicate money simply cannot control. Hit pause on this frame and study him with me. Look at this guy. Tie, top button, undone for a don, who wears custom suits like art. This messy look screams that his brain is short-circuiting. Sarafina stands in that massive doorway, not giving him a single inch. He stares at her messy hair like he does not know her. Super's mad. She stopped playing the quiet trophy wife. He tries his confused husband act, but she verbally obliterates him. She drops the hammer, telling him he never loved her. He just loved how good she made him look. He tries his usual gaslighting garbage, but she is an absolute brick wall. It teaches us huge lessons about true power. Real strength is simply refusing to play their rigged games. The scary boss is getting totally dismantled on a cold porch. She takes his trash talk and throws it right back in his teeth, proving he always treated her like a cheap rental. The camera zooms in as his brain totally crashes. He starts backpedaling hard, making up weak excuses about how it was just tough guy talk for his mafia buddies, completely ignoring how he destroyed her. But Sarafina does not blink. She is pure iron. Her voice is flat as she tells him their business deal is officially cancelled. Watching his mug face melt into panic is top-tier entertainment. Right when he tries to act scary again, she drops the absolute nuke. She is pregnant. The silence is so heavy you could cut it with a knife. Life teaches us this over and over. Total in control is a complete joke. The dictator just realized he created a kid in a world he cannot boss around anymore. That nuke completes brain. Before he can gasp, she is laying down the new rules. 10 weeks pregnant, she is keeping the house, and he will play her game or lose it all. She is literally using his own mob boss tactics against him. B. Stims steps up, trying to pull that same scary intimidation trick, but she does not flinch. He growls that the kid belongs to him, but it just sounds like a pathetic guy losing his grip.
To an us narcissist, a kid is just a mirror, show off to their own ego.
She shoves her lawyer's card into his hand and slams the heavy door right in his face. Boom. That boundary setting teaches us a wild lesson. You do not always need to pull a weapon to beat a toxic monster. Sometimes the absolute biggest flex is just shutting the door and are entirely starving them of your fear. Stick with me here because you and I have totally seen this toxic playbook before. He begs through the wood, promising to fix it all. But she knows the garbage truth. You cannot fix a machine that was built to ruin your life. She twists that heavy lock and watches his defeated shadow walk away. Look at how the camera shoots this. 0 tears. She has turned into absolute concrete. Later on, sitting in that massive, quiet house, she feels the baby kick for the first time. That tiny flutter completely resets her whole brain. She talks out loud to the empty room, making a hard promise to keep the kid miles away from his Mafia garbage. The lesson here is so real, guys. Real love is not about owning someone like a shiny Rofi. True love is having the absolute guts to stand up and fiercely protect the innocent.
Boom, though Jivas turns into a straight-up horror movie. Serafina gets woken up by her housekeeper totally panicking. There is a creepy shadow lurking outside. First thing she does?
Hand straight to the belly, pure mom instinct kicking in. But the guy by the gate is not her ex. It is his top Mafia hitman, Marcus Kells. The room instantly gets freezing. Hitmen like Marcus do not come to chat, they come to make people disappear. She straps on her heavy boots like she is gearing up for war and marches. The snow is insane. You have this busted old mansion, and standing right in the yard is the actual Grim Reaper. Life throws these crazy lessons at us. Sometimes you are forced to stand on the edge of your worst nightmare, and you just have to step out of the light and stare the darkness straight down. Marcus tries the nice guy routine, but Serafina tells him to kick with rocks. So the assassin switches gears and uses the baby against her. He casually names every broken lock and blind spot around the house, trying to scare her, thinking she is easy prey. Watch her face here. She does not even shake. She crosses her arms, looking super confused. Marcus stops talking and the whole vibe shifts. The hitman suddenly realizes her stupid husband never told her how bloody the family business really is. In a weird move, Marcus decides to break the bad news himself. He calmly explains how the other mob bosses want to use her as bait. The life lesson here is super dark, guys. Pretending the bad stuff does not exist is then never going to protect you from the wolves. It is just a cheap blindfold, waiting to be ripped off. He basically tells her she's raw meat in a wolf den, but her reaction is absolute god tier. She straight up rejects the victim card. Instead, she's mad at Dorian for putting a bounty on her head. For a split second, this dead-eyed hitman actually smirks and gives her a tiny nod of respect. He realizes she finally gets how rigged this whole Mafia game is. Serafina looks right through this dude and drops the line, saying her kid belongs to her alone. Snatching the baby right off their chessboard is a massive win. But Marcus drops one last warning before he ghosts on Dorian is going to burn the city watch down to drag her back. It brings up a bitter truth about life. Toxic people do not start wars because they love you to the ground. They everything and losing their favorite toy.
Guys, we have to pause and look at this toxic power move together. The hitman casually drops a crisp psychological landmine right in her living room.
He uses her unborn baby as a bargaining chip, declaring the kid is Mafia royalty, and vanishes into the freezing night before she can even scream. The real tragedy? We literally watch her shaking hand slip that card into her pocket. It is a bitter pill, but here is a harsh life lesson. Sometimes the exact monster you are running from becomes your only shield when the lights go out. 21 days of dead silence follow. Trust me, that is not peace. That is just the scouting pause before a loaded gun finally goes off and ruins everything. She actually believes she won, and the sheer innocence of that hope is just heartbreaking to watch. We see her nesting in the warm light of the kitchen, housekeeper. Finally remembering how to breathe like a normal being, the heavy fog of trauma is lifting from her eyes. But in the underworld, peace is just a pretty lie whispered in the dark before the real storm hits. Here is a simple about life. When the world around you gets a little too quiet, that is exactly when you need to start checking the shadows. Her fragile illusion of safety shatters into a million jagged pieces. The absolute center her how ghostly glances through the frosty window. There, idling silently at the edge of the property, sits a strange pitch-black car. Let us watch this massive train wreck unfold in real time. She desperately tries to wave it off as lost driver, forcing the most unconvincing smile you have ever seen. But the housekeeper just shakes her head, knowing they live at the absolute edge of nowhere. As the sun sets and paints the room in bruised purple, sheer panic takes the wheel. She frantically locks every single heavy door. And then the tragic irony hits its peak. Her shaking fingers dial the syndicate. She begs the exact name devils she swore to escape to come save her. It is a devastating lesson, honestly. Fear makes hypocrites of us all, driving us right back into the arms of our abusers. Over the crackling phone line, the operative coldly commands her to stay locked inside. The trap is officially shut. Picture this scene. The camera frames her pale face through the wet window as two massive black vehicles crush the gravel outside. Marcus was definitely not making a polite request. He was giving a fatal command. Within an hour, her quiet little sanctuary becomes a heavily armed fortress. A guy with a jagged scar steps right up to her door. He does not ask for permission. He looks her dead in the eye and states that the syndicate now own grounds she walks on. It is a brutal reality check and a major life lesson. When you rely on toxic people to shield you from the cold, the first toll you pay is your own freedom. In the harsh glare of the porch lights, she is no longer a grieving mother. She is just a priceless piece of cargo being locked inside a very dark vault. Heavily armed guards take their positions in the freezing mud, leaving her trapped. By dawn, the phone rings. It is the big boss, Dorian. His voice crackles like broken glass, dripping with paranoid madness. She grips the receiver until her knuckles turn white. But Dorian drops the heavy hammer of his wrath. He twists her pregnancy finger. She sights her soul to the dark. It is a sobering life lesson for all of us. You can never compromise with someone who views you only as a mirror for their own ego. This toxic mafia king, his wife and unborn child are not human beings to be cherished. They are simply territory to be conquered and totally controlled. Tears spill over her lashes as she begs him for one single breath of clean air. She refuses to be buried alive in a gilded cage surrounded by rifles. But Dorian shuts her down, wearing the fake mask of a tragic hero, forced to protect his family. This is the moment that shatters the soul. The camera pushes in on as the horrifying realization clicks into place. Where was all this protective love 6 months ago when she was drowning in the shadows of his penthouse? The truth hits her like a punch to the gut. He only cares because she carries his royal blood. Here is a vital life lesson written in her tears. Conditional love is never actually love. It is merely a cold business transaction. Her only value to him is the dark legacy growing inside her. She slams the phone down hard.
For one brief heartbeat, feels like an absolute victory, but then she rests her forehead against the freezing window.
Out in the driving snow, an armed guard simply stares right back at her. She knows she has the legal right to banish these guys, but raw survival instinct freezes her blood. She is a moving target in a very dark forest. It proves a bitter life lesson we all must learn.
Closing your eyes and ignoring a monster never actually makes it walk away. One suffocating week bleeds into the next until Silas, the family attorney,
appears on her icy porch. He clutches a thick leather dossier, looking totally hollowed out by fear. Her white illusion is officially dead. The violent sins of her past have finally knocked on her front door.
Let us step into her dim living room and look at this terrifying evidence together.
Door clicks shut, and Silas slides a grainy photograph across the oak table. It is that exact same dark sedan. He tracked the plates through a maze of shit companies, and the truth is a waking nightmare. The Castello family. These are the absolute apex predators of the underworld, the bloody rivals Dorian supposedly buried years ago. You can watch the color drain from her trembling face, like a dormant virus. They never actually vanished. They simply waited in the dark for a crack in the throne. It is a haunting reminder and a heavy lesson for all of us. The fatal mistakes of your past do not just magically evaporate. Nativing sit finationy in the shadows, ancient fination be botch. Silas offers zero hollow comfort, painting the brutal reality in harsh strokes. In this ruthless kingdom, her unborn child transforms her from a fleeing wife into the ultimate Mafia weapon. If the rivals capture her, they hold the leash to Dorian himself. She stares at the photo, crushed by the gravity of a violent world she thought she outran. Her voice cracks as she offers to empty her bank accounts to hire private security. But Silas shuts that fantasy down with surgical precision. Her savings are pennies compared to the river of blood money funding her husband. Here is a massive life lesson for you. True independence requires far more than just a rebellious spirit. It demands real power. Right now, her toxic husband is the only shield she has left to survive. Twisted negotiation together. Lies a slippery compromise. His arms but old grounds. But she must draw a firm line. No one breathes the air inside her home, and absolutely no one reports her movements back to the Mad King.
It's a dangerous dance of setting boundaries with a literal monster. Her stomach is at the cold logic, but she slowly nods, demanding Silas into a binding contract.
They are her watchdogs now. It teaches us a grim, necessary life lesson about survival.
Sometimes staying alive means you have to sit down and negotiate terms with the devil himself.
The camera captures a chilling smile forming on the face of Silas. The lawyer got exactly what he came for. Naturally, Dorian fights these boundaries like a wounded animal, throwing a volatile tantrum over the phone. But she holds her ground until he surrenders. Yet, even with his mob muscle banished to the lawn, the psychological decay is brutal to witness. The rhythmic thud of combat boots pacing past her, terror, hammer, anxiety that slowly shreds her sanity. We see her curled up on the floor of the empty nursery, desperately gripping onto the fading ghost of a normal life.
It becomes so tragic, finally breaks down, begging her to leave the cursed grounds entirely.
It reminds us of a very bitter life lesson.
A prison of your own careful designs is still a prison. Will never actually set you free.
Her voice, as she confesses to the housekeeper that she is drowning in terror, Desperate to feel the pulse of humanity, she drives to a quiet town nearby. The camera follows to her through the mundane motions of a forgotten life, buying warm pastries, running her fingers across bookstore spines, sipping black coffee while watching strangers pass by. For one fleeting moment, her heart feels light, whispering she might actually survive this tragedy. But that fragile glass house shatters the exact second she returns to the parking lot. A strange man is leaning against the cold metal of her car, his eyes burning a hole straight through her soul. Here is a brutal life lesson. You can never pretend the storm is over just because the sun peeks through the clouds. The Reaper was always waiting.
Guys, we gotta unpack this insane opening scene. Gasping, full on panic mode, sprinting down this freezing alley, but there's a massive shadow lighting behind her.
Matching her step for step like a total creep. He is literally playing with his food, letting the terror of Austin sink in. Her hands are shaking so bad, her car keys sound like maracas. And then boom. The gap. Instantly nuking. But this is just smirk. He delivers a message from the big boss himself, Vincent Costello. The nightmare is officially here. It just goes to show you running from your toxic problems just never works out. You have to face your demons early, or they will definitely hunt you down the second your legs give out.
Pause there. You and I both know the Twisted Minds games. This turf, or this goon didn't just hand her a random note. He basically handed her a loaded weapon wrapped in velvet.
He sees this desperate woman literally suffocating in her rich girl cage, watched 24/7 by her tyrant husband, and tosses her an invisible key. She snaps at him, glaring like a cornered beast, but the dude just smirks and absorbs the hate. Cool as ice, he slides the secret coordinates right onto the hood of her luxury ride. This whole setup is brilliantly evil. It is a crazy reminder that the most dangerous traps in life do not look like rusty cages or heavy chains. Sometimes the worst traps look exactly like a wide open door begging you to step inside. Look at her hands shaking. This hesitation is absolute tragedy. Her goddess is screaming to leave that toxic bait alone and call in Dorian's heavily armed squad. But living in a mafia nightmare literally rewires your brain. Instead of dipping, she snatches that paper like a drowning victim, grabbing a rusty knife. She tosses the note into her passenger seat, but the poison is already in her system. Cut to later that night, and her massive luxury bedroom feels like a prison cell. She is staring at the ceiling, losing her mind, wondering if Costello is actually saving her, or just using her as cannon fodder to absolutely wreck Dorian. It hits hard, honestly. When you spend your entire life surrounded by bloodthirsty wolves, you completely lose the ability to recognize a real shepherd. If she actually snitches to her husband about this, she is basically handing over the last tiny shred of her soul. Admitting she even thought about the enemy's deal makes all her suffering totally pointless. So her mouth shut. Around midnight, fully obsessed with her own chaotic drama, she digs that crumpled note out of her pocket. She coordinates in the pitch black, torn between escaping and staying in her comfy cage. Common sense says burn the paper, but she stashes instead. By dawn, the Mafia wife facade is fully rebooted. She spends the morning folding clothes, faking the perfect marriage so she does not mentally explode. It is wild, right? Sometimes the Marseilles we allies with ourselves are the only things keeping our broken pieces from falling apart. Stick with me on this, because this is the exact second she locks in her own doom. The massive estate is dead, quiet, and she is just staring holes into the clock. 12:15.
every single survival instinct, just screaming that walking out that door is game over. But the human brain is so twisted when it lies to itself. She literally gaslights herself off into thinking that scoping out the enemy is a genius tactical move. She tells herself that just listening to the dawn is not trail. She
grabs keys, stares her massive bodyguard right in the face, and drops a flawless lie about running some of her basic errands. It proves that this is a crazy universal truth about us. We will march straight into a blazing inferno, completely convinced we just want to feel a little bit of the warmth. She waves off her armed security detail like an absolute boss. To pretend she actually runs her own life. She ignores the massive anxiety of committing pure treason. 2 o'clock hits, and she walks into this
ultra-luxurious, dead-silent VIP dining room. And boom, there he is. Gaston, the silver, rocking a custom suit.
Flashing a smile does it to touch his cold, dead eyes.
Claiming just smirks.
A top-tier predator never cares if the rabbit shows its teeth. It is a brutal lesson in power dynamics. Faking a little resistance only makes your inevitable capture feel way more satisfying to the bad guy. The Don points at the empty chair, literally owning the room. He controls the oxygen. Some ridiculously expensive wine while she is gripping her water glass like she is drowning. Then Costello goes for the throat. He doesn't politely ask about her pregnancy. He drops it a cold, hard fact, completely shattering her defenses. He tosses out some fake congratulations about Dorian, and she just snaps, demanding to know what he actually wants. The polite grandpa act vanishes instantly. He leans in and snarls that Dorian stole his entire criminal empire. He wants her feeling totally alone in this mafia war. It is a harsh truth we see all the time. Whenever ruthless kings start a war over a throne, the innocent senders are always the ones getting crushed. With total surgical precision, Costello sits back and just roasts her miserable life. He holds up a brutal mirror, proving she isn't some cherished mafia queen.
She is literally just a giant target painted
on Dorian's back.
He twists the knife, claiming Dorian is way too busy playing bodyguard to actually fight this gang war. It's just that he is using her.
But Costello hits her with a genius reverse card.
He tells her she would actually be saving herself. He hypes up her bravery, then nukes her false sense of security,
reminding her that her protector is a literal monster. The trap is officially armed. Total freedom, but she has to leak the family secrets. Always remember this lesson. The devil is perfectly fine with unlocking your cage as long as he gets to hold the leash. Costello dangled this ultimate dream right in front of her
face. We are talking a wiped record, a ghost identity, and a peaceful life anywhere she wants. For someone this broken,
that kind of hope is straight up by lethal. She tries to fight back, calling his deal a massive betrayal, but the Don goes for the kill shot. Unblinking, he tells her never loved her, that she is just a shiny trophy he bought to flex his criminal empire. And the saddest part, that totally breaks her. Exactly what she secretly believes is.
She has heard her husband
talk about her like expensive furniture before. It's insanely dark. You end up fiercely defending the guy who locked you up just because he feeds you. Fear loves to dress herself up as noble loyalty. You can literally see the mental math happening in her head during this heavy silence. She clocks the Dorian for Costello is not actual freedom. It is just swapping her daily demon for the final boss of the Underworld. Pulling together whatever dignity she has left, she stares him down and drops a hard no. Costello does not even blink, just coldly warns her that the clock is ticking on her survival. She struts out like a total queen, but the second those glass doors shut behind her, the boss energy evaporates. She crashes into a car seat, hands vibrating against the steering wheel as the adrenaline totally drains out. It drops a brutal truth on us. Just because you walked out of the lion's den alive does not mean you didn't leave with some major permanent invisible scars. The insane weight of her situation finally crushes her right here. If she tells Dorian about this chat, his massive ego will literally explode. She is getting caught in the blast radius. If his goons catch wind of her, she is getting fitted for concrete shoes. She is just frozen in her car, staring at her screen, actually wanting a hug from the exact same mafia boss who ruined her life. It is peak tragedy, guys. The prisoner crying for the warden. With zero backup plan, she fires up the engine and heads straight back to her luxury prison. The massive gates open. She walks in looking like an absolute ghost and feeds the staff a lie about a bad headache. It teaches us a crazy, painful reality. The heaviest chains you will ever carry are the fake smiles you force to survive the day. She locks her bedroom door, exhausted, scanning the room. She played the good mob wife to the day and rejected the big bad villain, right? But that wave of relief she was waiting for never shows up. Instead,
The walls of this mansion feel like they are closing in on her. You can close your eyes all you want, but your soul knows when it is trapped. Then, right at midnight, absolute chaos erupts.
the brutal sound of shattering this glass echoes up the stairs, angry shouting, heavy boots stomping, and then the insane roar of automatic gunfire tears the house apart. In pure panic, she throws her whole body against a massive dresser, barricading the door. It is a terrifying fact of life. The universe will violently test your walls the exact second you start believing you are finally safe. The camera locks on a Safina, completely paralyzed by terror. She is curled up behind a massive wooden headboard, whispering to the dispatcher like a ghost. Then the real nightmare starts. The brass handle on her door slowly turns. A cold voice calls her name, spinning a garbage lie about just wanting to talk. She covers her mouth, watching in shock as the door splinters under heavy boots. Suddenly, the hallway explodes into chaos. Men yell about federal agents, turning this gorgeous mansion into a deafening war zone of flying lead. She is in the dark, totalist life. Power drops a heavy life lesson on us. When a violent storm kicks your door down, sometimes your only play is to hide in the shadows, hold your breath, and wait for the worst to pass. Let us unpack this aftermath together, because it is wild. The gunfire fades, leaving a silence so heavy you could choke on it. Then comes the slow crunch of boots on broken glass. Marcus yells her names, promising his nighty is over, moving like a shadow, but which are nosing a nice to dress her aside and unlock with sighs. Knock was the door. Marcus is standing, drenched in crimson, his weapon still smoking. Behind him, guards drag a trembling kid, barely 20 years old. Instead of running, she steps right up to the boy sent to put her in the ground. She demands to know who sent him, but he swallows hard, trapped in dead silence. It leaves us with a brutal reality check. Desperate foot soldiers always pay the ultimate price in blood, while cowardly kings stay untouched on comfortable thrones. The madness of this scene is absolutely tragic. Serafina demands to know if Costello ordered the hit, but the boy offers nothing but dead silence. Marcus drags the kid into the shadows for a brutal interrogation. When morning rises, it highlights the true cost of this violence. Bodies are scattered across expensive marble floors, with police doing their routine walkthrough before the lawyers show up. Over in the kitchen, Rose blindly brews coffee, clinging to a simple task to keep from losing her mind. Then comes the deafening roar of helicopter blades. Dorian touches down right on the front lawn, pulling a massive flex of dominance, but it leaves us with the harsh truth. You can buy a private army, but all the dark money on earth can never buy back a shattered peace of mind. You and I need to look closely at this frame, because it perfectly highlights the tragedy of their marriage. Dorian ignores the carnage and finds Serafina in the dim library, hollowed out by trauma. He freezes at the doorway as he drops to his knees, begging to know if she and the baby are safe. Ruthless boss is finally destroyed by terror. He whispers a fragile apology, and she weeps openly. But watch his body language. He does absolutely nothing. His hands shake, then curl into useless fists. He is incapable of holding his crying wife. It shows us as a profound reality. A guy might possess the power to move mountains, but if he lacks the capacity to offer warmth, his love is just a freezing, empty room. She recovers fast, scrubbing tears away as if they burn like acid. In this dark underworld, showing weakness is a straight-up death sentence. Her voice flattens into dead iron. She holds his gaze, stating plainly that those assassins were hunting her. She hurls his empire right back in his face, calling this bloody nightmare the exact cage he locked her inside. Dorian physically flinches. Accusation strikes deeper than any bullet could. He admits taking the blame cannot repair the damage. Marcus interrupts from the doorway, demanding a tactical meeting right now. Dorian pulls her to her feet, even though she never asked for his hand. The lesson here is undeniable. An apology from someone who consistently places your life in danger is merely a down payment on their next disaster. The dining table is now a Cold War room covered in bloody photos and flickering monitors. 3 of Dorian's lieutenants wait, including a quiet woman who dissects minds for a living. Marcus delivers the grim facts. 2 dead guys belonged to Costello, and the 3rd was a mercenary from Boston. At the mention of Costello, a tremor of panic crosses Serafina's face. Marcus, he leans in, dropping his tone to its dangerous whispers, asking what she knows normally. She would build a flawless fortress of lies, but surviving a shootout empties the soul. The reality of human nature becomes painfully clear here. Keeping dangerous secrets is a heavy luxury an exhausted mind can no longer afford. The dark truth always spills out when you are simply too tired to hold the cup. Let's step closer, because the tension here is literally suffocating. The second Serafina confesses she met with Costello. A heavy vacuum of dead silence drops over the table. Dorian slips back into his untouchable boss armor, his face freezing into a stone mask. But beneath his calm brow, his eyes swirl with pure pleasure. He asks what she has done. His voice to sink a glacial whisper that cuts deeper than screaming ever could. She admits a messenger approached her in Cold Spring. Marcus staggers, stunned by the sheer risk she took. But Bumwitz grasps Billslot Spite locked inside a balls out. Even if wolves wait below, desperation makes any dark exit look like absolute salvation. Dorian strikes instantly, twisting her confusion into an act of treason. He ignores the truth that she is just a hostage in his shadow. But watch her posture. Serafina locks onto his deadly stare for 5 solid seconds. After a shootout, that level of defiance is monumental. She fires back, confessing she considered the offer because she is drowning in fear. She wants a life away from armed guards and shattered glass. Dorian coldly deflects, reminding her she met with a monster who hunted him for 3 years. She swears she told the rival to rot. Marcus rubs his face, realizing their security is a complete illusion. It teaches us a stark lesson. When you build a life out of fear and control, the people you lock inside will inevitably claw at the walls looking for an escape. The intelligence officer speaks up. With her slicked hair and cold gaze, she dissects the crisis like a cruel equation. She explains that attending the meeting broadcasted a fatal weakness. The marriage is fracturing. Guys like Costello are apex predators. When they smell blood, they swarm. Costello now views Serafina as a loaded weapon. He will either squeeze her until she breaks, or decide she's a liability and erase her completely. That horrific truth settles the room like a heavy shadow. Serafina's eyes go wide as the pieces lock together. Was the attack tonight a failed kidnapping or an execution? It delivers a terrifying warning about desperation. A single conversation with the wrong devil can hand them the exact ammunition needed to burn your entire world to ashes. The officer confirms Serafina painted a target on her back. Dorian remains perfectly still. His gaze locks onto his wife with terrifying intensity, masking the dark math grinding in his mind.
Whispered, cleared. Marcus hesitates, but waves the guards out. The doors click shut. They stand alone over bloody photographs like a ruined battlefield.
Serafina refuses to cower.
She swears she never betrayed him. She admits hiding the truth, 'cause his volatile wrath makes him an unpredictable nightmare.
She accuses him of acting like a billionaire whose prized toy was scratched, rather than a husband who actually loves his family. It brings us to a vital understanding. True love requires equal partnership and respect, never a suffocating contract of toxic ownership. Stick with me here, because the emotional dam finally shatters. Serafina unleashes years of agony, explaining she just wanted one breath outside his suffocating empire. She drops a devastating truth. Escape is impossible. A forged passport cannot erase the unborn child inside her, nor the chains binding her to his dark world. She knows his absolute control will never let her walk. Dorian stands cold as ice, quietly confirming he will never leave. Questioning his obsession when he spent years treating her like a ghost. A shadow crosses his face as he admits his mistakes, but Serafina only lets out a bitter, broken laugh. Here is a truth you must never forget. An apology today does not magically erase the years of agonizing, emotional starvation someone's has already suffered. For the first time in this tragedy, the untouchable wolf loses his grip. Looks entirely disoriented, running a shaking hand through his hair. The weight of his sins crashes down.
He confesses to treating her as a beautiful antique, neglecting the living woman underneath.
He realizes the hypocrisy of demanding loyalty while starving her affection since their wedding day. Serafina braces to challenge his rationale. The sheer irony hangs heavy. A man capable of orchestrating a global syndicate is paralyzed by the emotional wreckage in his own home. The lesson here is glaringly obvious. You cannot treat human beings like disposable gears in a cold machine and then act shocked when they break down. Genuine loyalty must always be earned. Let's step right into the red together, guys, because this scene standing to make sure Serafina standing barefoot among shattered glass and drying blood. She is shaking uncontrollably, wanting to scream that she does not need his Mafia-style protection. She absolutely refuses to raise her unborn baby in an active war zone. Dorian, standing there in the moonlight, tries to lock her away in his Manhattan penthouse his shiny gilded cage. But our girl is not having it. She refuses to become his invisible ghost. She looks him dead in the eye and asks what happens when the bullets finally stop flying. Does she just fade back into the background like a pretty little prop? His heavy silence answers for him. It leaves us with a quiet, undeniable truth. True safety should never require you to completely erase who you actually are. She drops an ice-cold air remark and leaves the terrifying crime boss standing alone in the dark.
Over the next 2 days, the giant estate turns into a sterile crime scene.
Forensics map out every bullet hole, completely missing the massive emotional craters left behind. Serafina plays it smart, feeding her rehearsed script to a federal agent who is desperate to lock Dorian up. She swallows the truth about her secret meeting with the rival mob, knowing that opening that door would drag her straight to untouched mail and scrubbing floors that are already spotless, desperately trying to hold on to some illusion of control. It brings up a heavy truth about human nature. You simply can't wash away deep trauma with soap, no matter how hard you scrub. Look closely at how suffocating this setup is. The estate's security is doubled, making the air feel heavy enough to choke on. Serafina draws a hard line, banning Dorian from the main house. But true to his controlling nature, Stu's unkished room. The mob boss simply sits a room down the street. Every morning he shows up to play the devoted guardian. He sits at her kitchen island, slowly sipping black coffee, letting his heavy presence mess with her head. By day 3,
her composure snaps. She demands to know why she is still hovering, her voice shaking with pure exhaustion.
He claims he cannot trust a single soul with her safety. She fires back that he trusts absolutely no one with anything. The lesson here is vital. A chronic lack of trust in others is usually just a mirror reflects the unresolved darkness inside your own mind.
Watch Dorian work his magic here. Writes his papers down, master's class in emotional manipulation, looking her right in the eyes. Or so he calls her the one person he actually failed.
It is a perfectly calculated move, engineered to yank on those fragile trauma bond strings.
And the creep works.
Serafina freezes, pouring her tea in dead silence.
That quiet stretches out until a ringing phone shatters the tension. Marcus with a grim update. The captive gunman finally broke. Marcus skips the gruesome interrogation details.
And Serafina deliberately chooses not to what they did to ask what the hit. The rival Glasgow Dello family ordered the hit. This brings a harsh reality. When we actively choose to look away from the cruelty done in our name, we become totally complicit in the violence.
The NASA to kill us. You're the teacher. They quanted, Serafina breathing, saw the Dorian's head.
The real horror hides in the facts Marcus delivers. The Castello crew did not guess their way into the estate. They had inside intelligence on guard rotations and blind spots. For the first time,
Dorian feels his untouchable armor crack. There is a rat. Someone on his payroll sold them out. You can feel the room's temperature drop to freezing. The betrayer is someone with top access,
living right inside their inner circle. Serafina feels a sickening twist in her stomach. It hits us with a brutal life lesson. The thickest steel walls you build are completely useless if the monster is already sitting safely inside your house. How close was hidden traitor?
Marcus actually hesitates, knowing the damage his answer will do. The mole was close enough to track her private schedule. It is a catastrophic level of betrayal.
Someone Dorian personally allowed near his just turned her into a walking target. drops to ice. The switch flips, and he goes into hunting mode.
He orders Marcus to tear the organization
apart to find the rat, no matter the bloody cost. Serafina stands by the window, drowning in sudden, suffocating paranoia. She asks if it was someone he truly trusted. That single triggers 2 grueling of ruthless mob interrogations. The lesson here is vital. Trust is a beautiful human vulnerability, but in the wrong hands, it is merely a loaded weapon pointed directly at your head. Picture the heartbreaking contrast of this scene. Serafina is trying to find a shred of normal life, quietly putting together a baby crib with Rose. Then the heavy door opens. Dorian has not slept in 2 solid days, brutally ripping his crime family apart until Marcus finally located the infection. He looks like a ghost walking among the living. He says they need to talk, and Rose quickly clears out. When Serafina asks who Vita did it, Dorian breaks the devastating news. It was his own cousin, Leo.
The exact guy who used to hang out in a penthouse and casually discuss that so polite relative sitting at family dinner was the dirt snake all along.
It brings us to an unforgettable life lesson. The most dangerous predators rarely bare their teeth. They just smile nicely across the table.
Serafina quietly asks what happens next, even though the sinking feeling in her chest tells her she already knows the bloody answer. Leo had been feeding their rivals sensitive secrets for months.
Guard routes, bank numbers, the beating heart of the operation. Dorian is actually physically shaking. He keeps repeating that Leo was family, totally unable to process how his own flesh and blood could do this. He brought his cousin into the inner circle out of blind loyalty, only for Leo to sell them out for cash. Leo had a massive gambling problem, and he did not care who had to bleed to cover his debts. Hearing this grim reality, Serafina crumbles onto the nursery floor, completely drained of all fight. It serves as a painful life lesson. When desperate greed takes root in someone's heart, it will easily burn down every single bridge of family loyalty. This is where the story hits its most unforgivable low.
Leo knew exactly about the pregnancy. He knew Serafina was hiding at this state, yet he handed the rival mob the perfect map to strike her down.
Dorian finally registers that chilling fact. His face shifts into something straight out of a cold nightmare. His own cousin traded the life of his unborn child just to cover bad gambling debts. When Serafina manages to ask where Leo is now, Dorian's voice goes completely flat. He just says, Marcus has him. She does not ask what that means. Her exhausted mind desperately protecting itself from the gruesome Mafia truth. Dorian decides right then that a betrayal this deep ends only one way, is a sobering life lesson. When you willingly choose to put innocent lives on the chopping block for money, wiscontrade förbud your own ode. Tragic handlingsregler is already written in stone. The thought of more blood spilling makes Serafina physically sick. She begs him to spare the violent details and end this endless cycle of pain. Then Dorian drops to his knees and for the first time gently reaches out her trembling hand. That firm grip actually grounds her, and she hates herself for finding comfort in the monster who put her in this position. You and I know what this is. It is the dark trap of trauma bonding wrapping tightly around her mind. He swears he will take care of it. By the time the sun comes up, Leo is permanently gone. Dorian walks into the kitchen at dawn, looking completely hollowed out, and quietly announces it is done. She just nods, but wrapped in total numbness. The life lesson here? Seeking comfort in the exact source of your trauma only guarantees you will never truly escape the nightmare. She does not feel shock or burning anger anymore, just a heavy emptiness in her chest. She points out the terrifying reality to him. The rival family is going to strike back hard, and the blood will just keep flowing. Her off physically cracks as she admits she cannot do this anymore. The idea of bringing an innocent baby to jump to a dark world where family members... Well, Dorian looks at her, and for one split second, the arrogant mob boss looks genuinely terrified. He admits out loud that he has no idea what to do. But then his mental sickness, that toxic obsession with total control, kicks right back in. He firmly insists they will figure a way out of this mess together.
Listen closely to the life lesson here. You cannot fix a poisoned environment by simply surviving in it.
At some point, you must find the courage to stand up and walk away from the table. The camera zooms in on Serafina, her voice shaking as she whispers that they are trapped in a total nightmare. But stick with me here, because Dorian is about to drop the biggest plot twist of the series. To stop the bloodbath, this ruthless apex predator offers the unthinkable. He is ready to hand over his entire turf, his bloody fortune, and his Mafia crown to his worst enemy. He knows the rival will see this surrender as a massive SL, but he literally does not care. Tossing the keys to his dark kingdom into the fire is the only way to protect his family. It brings us to a super simple life lesson. True power is never about having endless control. It is about knowing the exact moment to let everything you built turn to ash for the ones you love. We seriously need to pause the video right here to soak in the absolute madness of this scene. A literal mafia boss is completely ready to torch his own empire. Serafina is totally shook, and her trauma will not let her trust him. She demands to know what happens if Costello gets greedy and asks for more. Dorian does not even blink, my guys. He calmly promises to hand over every single dime until his bank account hits zero. When she cries out that he will resent her for stealing his crown, his voice is completely chill. He whispers that they will simply pack up and start from scratch. For a mob king, this is pure insanity, but there is a solid life lesson here. Genuine love demands absolute sacrifice, even if it means totally burning your past to the ground to keep your people safe. Watching this absolute apex predator voluntarily pull out his own teeth is wildly unnatural, but you can tell from his face he is 0% capping. Serafina is so overwhelmed by the sheer plot twist that she just asks for some time to breathe. Showing massive restraint, Dorian stops dead at the door. He vows to spend the rest of his life earning her trust back, then fades right into the hallway shadows. That leaves her just staring into the cold kitchen mirror, seriously wondering if a monster can actually wash the blood off his hands. The life lesson staring right back at us is the one ray of hope in this dark story. Even the most deeply wired, toxic survival habits can totally shatter when they finally collide with the massive gravity of an unconditional human connection. The setup for this surrender is brilliantly bleak. They pick some average hotel up in Albany to hand over the crown. Dorian gets super paranoid and demands she stays locked down with his guards. But Serafina firmly plants her feet. If her life is the main bargaining chip, she is going to be in that room. He tries to fight it, but finally folds. We watch them load into a heavily armed motorcade. Staring out the thick glass at the dead winter trees, she quietly asks for his backup plan. Dorian just stares into the grassy distance and flat out confesses he has absolutely none. It gives us a crazy, gripping life lesson today. Sometimes, the only way to escape a nightmare is to walk straight into the dark without a single safety net. The lighting in this stands-off scene is straight up suffocating. They arrive a whole hour early, with Seraphita dropping dry jokes just to stop her hands from shaking. Dorian sits totally motionless at the table, scanning the shadows. Then the heavy door groans open. Vincent Costello steps into the frame right on time, flanked by two massive enforcers. He freezes the second his eyes lock onto Serafina, and this sickening smirk spreads across his face. He drops a horribly polite, mocking greeting before sinking into his chair like he owns the literal oxygen in the room. The tension is incredibly heavy. We are slapped with a super chilling life lesson here. In any room filled with total darkness, true danger rarely ever screams. It simply sits down, looks you directly in the eyes, and smiles. Dorian does not even let the dust settle. With zero hesitation, he slides a ticket across the table, literally giving up his entire Brooklyn waterfront. He demands an absolute end to the vendetta against his wife, keeping his face locked in a stone-cold mask. Costello narrows his eyes, digging for the hidden trap. When he realizes there is no trick, a nasty laugh breaks the silence. The untouchable Mob King has fallen hopelessly in love. Costello totally mocks him, poking the caged beast for fun. But Dorian just tanks the damage without flinching once. It is a crazy irony and a sobering life lesson for us. The exact same love that finally redeems our shattered souls is the very thing that turns the strongest fighters into completely defenseless targets. Now this dark chess match gets incredibly
petty. Trying to flex his boss energy, Costello demands 24 hours to think it over. But Dorian refuses to look weak and snaps back,
cutting the clock to 12. Costello flashes a hollow smirk and walks out. Marcus fumbles the read and calls it a victory. But the camera zooms in on Dorian. His eyes are dead locked on a cell phone Costello supposedly forgot. They just got totally played. The life lesson here hits so hard. Pure hubris is a blinding poison. The exact second you think you finally outsmart the devil is the very moment you step right into his absolute worst trap. The absolute cruelty of this setup is wild. This was literally never a real negotiation. It was a twisted psychological test to see how desperate Dorian had become. So Dorian crushes that bug under his shoe. Diplomat is gone, and the ruthless killer is back. They bolt for the street, tires all screeching hard. But halfway home, a massive high-caliber bullet completely shatters their back window into diamond dust. The scene turns into absolute chaos. Dorian slams Serafina to the floorboards, using his own body as a human shield over her. Two black trucks roll out of the shadows, lighting up their backup crew with deafening gunfire. The life lesson is brutally clear today. You can meticulously plan your great escape, but chaos will always demand its heavy toll in blood.
We are thrown straight into the belly of this absolute They drift off the main road, scraping through nasty alleyways, while Costello's hitmen ride the bumper, unleashing a storm of lead.
It is a deafening blender of screaming and shattered glass. Serafina curls ours up to protect her unborn baby. As the gunfire flashes, she watches Dorian tanking the brutal impacts, realizing this as terrifying a boss would gladly hit their fatal bullet.
That thought just...
If her Dark King goes down, she is left totally alone with the wolves. With a sickening crunch, the bad guys ram them straight off the road. It leaves us with a haunting life lesson. True, love is a beautiful armor, but it also leaves us painfully vulnerable to the dark. The camera literally flips upside down to match her twisted reality.
When Serafina opens her bruised eyes, the car is totally crushed, and warm blood is dripping everywhere.
She panics and looks for Dorian, but the Mob King is completely paralyzed from a massive injury. She screams his name, but his pale face does not twitch. Outside the wreck, the creepy sound of heavy boots crunching on broken glass shatters the silence. Massive hands suddenly grab her, dragging her out into the dirt like a helpless rag doll. A dark shadow leans over her, delivering Costello-esque twisted final warning before the screen cut to pitch black. We're left with a brutally grim life lesson. In the ruthless game of human tragedy, surviving the catastrophic fall is often way more agonizing than the end itself.
Said a witness led but wrists are biting plastic zip ties.
She is shivering on the freezing concrete of a rotting warehouse. Lounging right across from her is Costello, completely basking in his own massive ego. He drops a toxic smile and brags that Dorian is finally powerless. He wants the Mafia throne and a husband in a body bag. He actually tries to offer her a polite little deal, but terrified as she is, Serafina fiercely spits right into his face. It is an insane boss move and a brilliant life lesson. True human dignity cannot be held back by cheap plastic. It shines the absolute brightest when the darkness tries to force you onto your knees. The camera pushes into Costello-esque solar eyes. This psycho exactly how to break a person. He skips physical torture and goes straight for the emotional jugular, targeting her unborn. That threat shatters her way harder than the car crash. She curls up to shield her stomach, zip ties biting into her skin. She tries to call his bluff, whispering he would never cross that line. Costello is completely deadpan. He called used the lost, his ransom is pure evil, and force him to come surrender alone.
Costello chuckles and shoves the phone into her shaking hands. We wrap this up with a totally tragic life lesson. The fragile illusion of human control is always the very first casualty of a real war. Look at the absolute on Serafina right now, guys. The camera is right up, and you can practically see the frantic math running in her head. Her husband is bleeding out.
She is heavily pregnant, and the clock is ticking way too fast. She grabs the phone with shaking hands and dials Dorian. He instantly, but man, the warmth is completely gone from her voice. It is just straight up ice. She drops the craziest ransom demand ever and tells him to come alone with absolutely zero backup. The silence on his end is heavier than a concrete block. He whispers the address, and she repeats the exact location where this whole nightmare is going down. Here is the real lesson today. When people are backed into a dark corner, all those nice morals vanish, and pure survival takes the wheel.
Let's look at this scene together, because it is wild. The camera zooms in on Costello looking like an absolute menace under this sickly yellow light.
He tells Dorian through finished. 60 minutes on the clock. It was order takeout. Crazy disrespect.
Back in the warehouse, Serafina is absolutely drowning in guilt for being the bait. Then boom, hard cut to Dorian. The guy is totally wrecked, dripping rain and blood.
His right-hand man, Marcus, is holding a snapped arm, begging him not to pull this suicide mission. But Dorian just wipes his face, and his eyes go completely dead. It is a massive reality check for us. True loyalty completely deletes your common sense, forcing you to walk right into a trap for the ones you love. The camera just locks onto Dorian, looking like an absolute unit, jaw totally clenched, Marcus is literally begging to take the hit for him, but Dorian shuts it down hard. Marcus is losing his mind, screaming about why they would ever trust a psychopath to play by the rules. But Dorian gets mistake. Like, the mother of his kids is not walking out of that room. He is completely ready to be a human meat shield just to buy Margus even me to him to sneak around the back. It drops a heavy lesson on us. Sometimes the only way to actually protect the people you care about is to throw it you spent your life building. You have got to watch the framing here, because this is where the entire plot flips. Marcus tries one last time, pointing at the absolute carnage around them, but Dorian does not care anymore. The mass crime empire, the millions in dirty cash, is all just garbage to him now. Serafina is literally the only thing keeping him breathing. He shoots Marcus a look so freezing cold, it shuts down the entire conversation. Dragging a busted leg, Dorian throws his wrecked body into his ride. Physical damage is a total joke right now compared to losing his family. He punches the drop spot into the navigation and absolutely stomps on the gas pedal. 40 minutes left. Tires screaming in the wet streets is a brutal reminder, honestly. We never really value what we have until we are staring down the barrel of losing it forever. Check out insane split screen. On one side, Dorian speeding straight into the blender, bleeding out and rocking 0 weapons. He is risking his own completely insane gamble. His phone lights up with a toxic text from the boss, but he just ignores it. Meanwhile, cut back to the warehouse. Serafina is shaking uncontrollably, wrists rubbed raw by zip ties. Castello is just pacing around, checking his watch like my board manager, waiting for a meeting to end. Soulless snake like him. Dorian caring about his wife is just pathetic. A massive target on his back. But honestly, pay attention to the lesson here. Do not ever sleep on a guy who has completely accepted that he might not make it out alive. When a man has nothing left to lose, he turns into a completely different breed of monster. The camera slowly zooms right into Sarah. They're looking fighting gas, breath for a single, literally just this guy plan baby kicks. It is such a gut punch, reminding us of the innocent life trapped in this mafia slaughterhouse. Then Costello crouches down, shadows covering his face, and casually asks us how far along she is. When she whispers, 5 months, his whole vibe switches to this super creepy, proud dad smile. The guy actually starts flexing about his own kids, like they are at a neighborhood barbecue. It went completely unhinged. This why here's those scare life lesson you can learn. The absolute worst villains do not look like monsters at all. They look like totally normal people, smiling right at you while plotting your downfall. Castello stands up and his massive shadow just swallows her whole.
He tries his to call, dropping this huge lob, how it is
Strictly business, and he hates the violence. Total garbage. The camera catches that sick look in his eyes.
You know exactly what is up. He does not just want to steal the crime throne. He wants to completely shatter Dorian from the inside out. Taking Ash, and this girl is just top tier petty revenge, but I'm actually bosses up, lifting her chin, telling this creep that it's going to torch the whole city to get her back.
Costello gives this sarcastic little shrug. Let the king try. It shows you exactly how broken some folks are. When someone is completely dead inside, they will rip apart your happiness just to feel a tiny little rush of absolute power. Listen close. You can hear the engine cutting out in the background. The final boss battle is officially starting. Some low-level goons drag Seraphina right under this super harsh spotlight, throwing bruised shadows all over the concrete. The massive metal doors squeal open and Dorian finally walks in. The dude looks like an actual zombie, totally drenched in blood and barely standing. His face is locked up tight until he locks eyes with his wife on the floor. In a split second, this untouchable warlord just breaks down into a terrified husband. He starts screaming at them to let her go. Just struts forward, doing It hits you with a painful truth. Every bit of tough guy armor you build is completely useless when someone holds your heart hostage.
Dorian is completely done with the theatrical nonsense. Forward, bleeding, just trying to get to Seraphina. But Costello is practically throwing a party for his own ego. Sinclair, Dorian doesn't even blink. Sit down for a session, just verbalize over his entire empire. The safe house.
The rackets, the crown. He tells him to take the whole bag, just let her walk. But Costello instantly drops the fake smile. This was never about the cash grab. He wants the king permanently off the board to secure his spot. This Dorian just stands there, chest out, ready to catch a bullet. Let this be a major wake-up call for all of us. You can have all the dirty money in the world, but it cannot buy you an extra second when time runs out. Watch how brutally the villain twists the knife
Right here. Actually stars is laughing at the hero routine. The script on Dorian.
He points right at the bleeding boss and tells Seraphina that her husband is the real reason she is in this mess. He totally destroys Dorian, slapping a proving lisp. Catch her inched. Cash the campus skirt like says it. She married the mob, and this cold warehouse is the final receipt. You can literally see the guilt just snapping Dorian in half. The toughest dude in the city totally breaks down and actually starts begging for her life. Honestly, the most painful lesson in life is having to look in the mirror and realize you are the actual toxic one in the story. Look closely at the framing in this shot, because we are watching the legend completely lose his crown. Costello yanks his piece and shoves the cold metal right against Seraphina's head. The villain stares Dorian dead in the eyes and gives him one simple humiliating order. Drop to your knees. The silence in that room is absolutely screaming. Dorian starts to shake. Seraphina is crying, silently begging him to stand tall and go out like a boss. But being a mob king means zero without her. Moving in slow motion, the broken Don gives up the ghost, letting his knees slam into the filthy concrete. Costello is glowing, demanding that Dorian vanish forever. It proves a massive point about reality. Having a huge ego is a fatal trap. When push comes to shove, you either swallow your pride or you lose everything. The camera gets uncomfortably close as Costello drops the absolute worst plot twist of the century. He tells the Broken King that Seraphina is actually staying locked up as an insurance policy. Dorian completely loses it, screaming and lunging forward, but the loud click of the gun stops him dead. The games are officially over. Dorian turns his battered face toward his crying wife. The tension in the air is totally suffocating as they share this intense, silent goodbye. She can read the raw panic in his eyes, telling her to do whatever it takes to survive. His tough guy persona completely vaporizes, and he finally chokes out the 3 words he has been hiding for 6 months. I love you. Honestly, it is a devastating life lesson. Too many of us wait until it is way too late to finally tell people how we feel.
Guys, but talk about the absolute god complex on Costello. He starts a slow countdown, getting a sick high off playing judge and jury. But before he even hits threes, boom, the metal doors get blown completely off their hinges. Marcus tears through the thick smoke, and his crew is just raining gunfire into the room. A normal guy would webshit and beg.
But the camera catches Costello cracking this twisted, sick smile. He digs the gun barrel right into Serafina's head, grabbing her pregnant. In his messed up brain, he is still the boss. It shows you exactly how blinding human ego can. Some people are so obsessed with having control that they will gladly burn their own lives to the ground, just as long as they get to hold the last match. Let us look at this together, because there's arrogance here. His arrogance here is actually insane. The warehouse is totally surrounded by cops, lit up by flashing lights. Yet Costello stands there, smiling like he has a royal flush. Down on the freezing concrete, our main guy Dorian is literally broken, begging this maniac to take his life instead of hers. Costello just laughs in his face, but right then, the whole vibe flips.
The camera pushes in, and this dark, terrifying calm washes over Dorian.
He drops his voice dead low, swearing that if that gun goes off, he will rip Costello apart with his bare hands.
Costello actually freezes up. It hits us with a pretty heavy truth today.
The only way to stop a real monster is to show them a predator way worse than they could ever dream of being. In a split second, that polished mobster mask completely shatters. Dorian launches himself off that bloody floor like a total savage, crashing right into Costello. A massive gunshot goes off, and the bullet misses Serafina by actual inches. Total, absolute chaos erupts in the room. The camera intentionally lingers on her. She is tied up and terrified, but she throws her bruised body out of the crossfire like a survivor. She watches her husband completely dismantle the guy who threatened her, just throwing brutal, merciless punches. We love to act like we are civilized people living by the rules, but the reality is way more primal. When the people you love most are pushed to the edge, you will gladly turn into a complete savage just to make sure they make it out alive. Costello is panicking now, scrambling across the floor for his dropped gun as his whole empire collapses. Dorian wildly pins the guy's wrist until the weapon slides away. But then, a massive crack echoes through the warehouse. A random thug.
What's up? Puts bullet straight up, boss. Off the floor, losing a ton of blood. Costello grabs the gun and aim is at Dorian's head, but out of nowhere, Marcus steps from the shadows and drops Costello with one clean shot. Nightmare over. As the smoke clears,
Dorian is literally bleeding out, but his eyes are frantically searching the room just to find his wife. It shows you some beautiful, real love completely overrides our survival instincts, making us ignore our own fatal wounds for them. Stick with me here, because this is wild. Like the ropes cut, Serafina does not run away. Instead, she sprints right back into the middle of this slaughterhouse. She drops to her knees, her hands shaking like crazy as she presses down on Dorian's bleeding shoulder. She is screaming at him in total terror. And what does this ruthless mafia boss do? He just looks up at her and whispers that he loves her. Hearing that soft confession in a room full of broken glass and bodies is insane. She just gasps, totally paralyzed by his words. It leaves us with a rough but real lesson about human bonds. Love does not always grow in a sunny, perfect garden. Sometimes it takes root in the darkest places, binding us forever to the exact same people who originally broke our hearts. Dorian is fading fast, his skin turning incredibly pale. But the brain of a top-tier mob boss never fully clocks out. He scans the room, making sure the threat is dead while Marcus shouts orders. Dorian tries to stand, but his legs just give out instantly. It literally takes his top enforcer and his terrified wife to drag him into their armored truck. Inside that dark cabin, Serafina holds his head in her lap. She is covered in his blood, crying her eyes out, begging him to stay awake. You and I need to really think about this for a second. Desperation is a crazy, powerful force. The pure need to save someone you love, your physical body that so far past its breaking point, making you do things you absolutely thought were impossible when your back is against the wall. Watching someone fade away right in front of you is pure nightmare fuel. As Dorian's eyes start rolling back, Serafina does not give him some soft, tearful goodbye. Nope, she uses her pure rage. She grabs his bloody shirt and swears that if he makes it through this, they are going to have a massive screaming match about all his lies. His heart is literally stopping. But he managed to squeeze her hand silently, promising to fix the mess he made. In a getaway car covered in blood, her aggressive anger is the only thing keeping him tied to this earth. It brings up a really deep point. Sometimes peaceful acceptance just makes it way too easy to let go. But raw, stubborn anger, that gives a fading person a hard, tangible reason to stay alive and keep fighting the darkness. The bright lights of the hospital give off zero comfort right now. While doctors are fighting to save his life, Serafina is sitting in the freezing hallway with a totally blank face. Your brain basically seeing unpicking plugs when the choo-choo is just too big to handle. Marcus tosses her some clean clothes to wash her husband's blood off, and the Mafia lawyers are handling the cops. She is just a zombie going through the motions. But then her friend Rose runs in and pulls her into a massive hug. That is the exact moment she completely shatters and starts sobbing. It is such a wild, fun thing about being human. We can survive the most chaotic situations by turning our emotions off like a switch. But the second someone shows us real kindness, all those heavy walls just instantly collapse into dust. The drugs finally wear off, and Dorian slowly opens his eyes. The very first thing he sees is Serafina, totally crashed out on his hospital bed, holding onto his hand for dear life. Also push light imos. Multi-track sinners. Then Marcus walks in, looking completely dead, inside from the shootout. The silence between these two eyes is so heavy, you could cut it with a knife. It shows us a really hard truth about getting a second chance. Guilt is a brutal, heavy backpack to carry around. But for a guy with a super dark past, that exact guilt is the only thing stopping him from making the exact same toxic mistakes all over again. Marcus stands there, reading off the casualty list with the completely dead eyes of a veteran hitman. He confirms the rival boss is currently chilling in a morgue. Because Dorian survived, the entire criminal underworld is terrified of him now. He literally just won the Mafia lottery. But watch Dorian right here. Without blinking, he drops an absolute nuke on his right-hand man. He is walking away from the mob. Normally, quitting the syndicate means you get a bullet in the back. But Dorian just looks at his wife and says he's done the bloodshed. True change is rarely some beautiful, glowing moment of clarity. Mostly, it just happens because incredibly tired of all the fighting that he literally cannot throw a single punch anymore. Picture this. A ruthless mafia boss retiring to plant tomatoes. It sounds completely insane, right? Marcus leans over the bed, warning him that stepping down just puts a massive target on his back.
The other crews will smell the lace and weakness and come for him. But Dorian doesn't even blink like this. It says to the fake perspective of the Underworld that vibrant ambition.
He gone. He only cared to keep Utings Marshraffner and their baby safe. Seeing that Dorian is dead, Musk just nods and pats his bruised shoulder.
We always think being tough means taking the most hits and staying on top. But this scene teaches us that real bravery is actually putting the weapon down, walking away from the power.
And choosing a quiet life when you have everything to lose. Out of nowhere, Serafina jolts awake, her trauma kicks in, and she starts frantically checking his monitors. Dorian tries to smile and play down the pain, but she is not having it. She was totally faking her sleep.
She heard his entire speech about leaving the mob. She stares hard into his eyes, looking for any hint that this is just another toxic mind game. Dorian holds her gaze,
swearing they can pack up and disappear. But guys, this is where the fairy tale ends. She does not just kiss him and forget everything. She looks right at him and asks how she is ever supposed to get past the hell he put her through. It is tough pills to swallow. Surviving the actual gunfire is the easy part. Choosing to forgive someone who hurt you every single day is a brutal, lifelong battle. Let's get straight into this madness. You've got a lethal mob boss who usually snaps his fingers and people fall in line. But right now, he's literally bowing down to Serafina. He isn't
demanding forgiveness. His voice is actually breaking while he begs for some single shot to be the dad their kid needs. She finally snaps and admits the cold truth.
The endless never hurt her who's twisted her mind is twisted at Underworld. But then she drops the absolute hammer. If he ever tries to lock her up again, she's out like a ghost. This brings up a hard truth you and I both need to recognize. Setting boundaries doesn't kill a relationship. Those firm lines are the exact beams you need to rebuild a life from absolute zero. The camera pushes in on Serafina. She throws him a quiet smirk, looking dead in his eyes, and straight up admits that their bond is absolute madness. Dorian gives it a silent nod at the harsh hospital lights, highlighting his exhausted face. Outside, a massive snowstorm is burying the streets. Hearing the steady beep of the monitor, it finally hits us. She's carrying the heaviest baggage of all, which is pure hope. 3 days later, the giant iron gates of his massive estate slam shut behind them. This was the exact place that used to be her literal prison.
But hearing those heavy locks click, she feels totally relieved. It's a crazy lesson to learn.
The walls we spend years trying to smash down are usually the exact ones that end up keeping the monsters out. Let's step into this quiet aftermath. The maid dips out, leaving Serafina staring at the files. Her ears are still ringing from all those shootouts. She wanders down the dark hallway to check on the apex predator she married. She pushes the oak door open and freezes in her tracks. Picture this. There sits a terrifying Mafia boss, wrapped up in thick white bandages, glaring with pure confusion at a bright yellow parenting book. She leans on the doorframe, letting out a tired laugh, and asks what he's doing. He looks up, looking as guilty as a kid caught stealing candy. It reminds us of a fragile reality when your entire world feels completely shattered. One totally normal, boring moment is the exact anchor you need to keep from going under. The bedroom lamp throws long shadows across the heavy scars on his chest. Dorian lets that bright little book drop onto the mattress. The stone-cold mob enforcer looks up with literal panic in his eyes. He whispers that he has zero clue how to be a father. Serafina steps into the light, gives him a fragile smile,
and says, "Welcome to the club. They're just two damaged people standing in the rubble, trying to build a family." Reaches out, sliding his bruised fingers through hers.
Dropping his tough guy act completely, he breathes out that he loves her, confessing his obsession was real love all along. This drops a massive truth bomb. The most broken people out there will always fight the absolute hardest to protect a simple life that they never even experienced. His voice drops into a low, gravelly avowal. He promised to say those words every single day until her traumatized brain accepts it. The camera tracks her gaze over to the nightstand, zooming in on the empty spot where her forced wedding ring used to be. A tiny shake in her jaw gives away her fear. She wants to give in so bad, but surviving means she needs hard proof, not just sweet talk. She offers a fragile whisper of a thank you, grateful that he burned his entire criminal empire down just to keep her safe. Seeing the raw pain in his dark eyes is rough as he firmly calls her his wife. This teaches us a harsh lesson. We rarely see the true value of real love rounded until we're standing in the smoking ashes of feeling absolutely every building we destroyed to means that get it. For the first time since she got there, the heavy lock on her door doesn't click shut. That's a massive psychological shift. While Wans howls against the glass, Dorian sits at his desk, tearing his underworld empire apart piece by piece. He makes dozens of calls, cutting off old allies and flushing millions in dirty money down the drain. It's brutal to watch, but suddenly, he completely freezes. Through the frost on his window, he spots movement. Down in the snow-covered garden, Serafina is taking a slow walk, holding her hand like a shield over her baby bump. Instantly, his tense shoulders drop. The takeaway here is huge. Real power is never about the massive kingdoms you conquer. It's always about the quiet, fragile things you're finally willing to protect. The camera isolates in the bright foyer, making him look like a dark stain on a white canvas. Dorian's loyal soldier is begging him to strike first, warning that rivals smell blood in the water. Dorian doesn't even blink. He stands like a stone statue, his voice dead as he says the criminal life is buried forever. Look closely at how Marcus flexes his jaw, and you can see the seed of betrayal taking. Meanwhile, our clueless couple is floating through a temporary bubble of paradise. They spend hours looking at ultrasound pictures and trying out baby names, begging the universe to let them be normal. It brings up a bitter reality check. For anyone living in the shadows, a sudden stretch of perfect happiness is usually just a beautiful mask hiding a massive tragedy. It's a freezing night in February when everything flips upside down. Firelight bounces off Serafina's face in the library as she casually drops a bomb. They actually renew their wedding vows. Dorian straight up stops the crystal glass in his hand, shakes just a tiny bit. This is the woman who was dragged to the altar crying, and now she's looking at her former captor, willingly offering her hand. Just zero threat, just a pure choice. And he chokes out a question of when, his voice heavy with total desperation. She gives him a sweet smile, promising to do it the second their baby arrives. The heavy dread hanging in the room is forcing us to face a painful truth. The exact second you dare to speak your perfect future out loud, the universe is always taking notes. You and I need to brace ourselves. This is the moment their entire universe shatters. He genuinely believes they've outsmarted the devil. But peace is always a scam in a tragedy. On a freezing March evening, the violent smash of breaking glass rips through the estate. Serafina's heart rate spikes. She screams for him, and his panicked voice yells back, begging her to stay hidden. Then a massive gunshot cuts the silence in half. Pure panic destroys any logical thought. She sprints barefoot down the sweeping staircase, only to find the man who promised her a safe future bleeding out onto the freezing marble floor. It hits us with a chilling realization. You can run from or dodge mistakes all you want, but the past always knows exactly where you sleep. The camera pans up from the puddle of blood.
Standing there in the moonlight is, his own flesh and blood cousin, the exact guy Dorian cried over while burying an empty casket.
Leo tilts his head, flashing a sick grin as he casually says hello. Serafina is totally frozen at the bottom of the stairs. Her shaking hands grip the railing as she tries to process how a dead man is tracking muddy footprints into her house. She chokes out that he's supposed to be in the ground. Leo lets out a dry laugh. He proudly drops the bomb that his whole murder was just a brilliant stage play, directed by none other than Marcus. It brings a devastating truth into the light. The hardest thing to survive is watching a ghost from your past and completely wreck the only future you ever tried to build. Dorian's face is turning a sickly shade of grey. Every breath sounds like wet gravel in his lungs, but the pure rage in his eyes could ignite the room. He coughs up blood, demanding to know if Leo orchestrated this nightmare. Leo drops into a casual squat next to him. He leans over his dying cousin, bragging that he was the rat feeding their moves to the cartel. But the bullet isn't what finishes Dorian off. Leo drops the ultimate news that Mark was bought out. His right-hand man simply cashed a massive check to fake the execution. Leo flashes a wicked smile, pointing out that loyalty is a scam. This leaves us with a horrifying reality check. Sometimes, the comforting hand you out of the fire is the exact same hand that dumped the gasoline in the first place.
The weight of that betrayal sucks the oxygen. The guy who saved Dorian was secretly digging his grave all along. Dorian is choking on his blood, demanding to know where Marcus is hiding.
Leo casually waves his pistol, laughing that their friend is chilling on a beach. Then, with terrifying calm, he levels the barrel dead between Dorian's eyes. Instantly, Serafina throws a pregnant body in front of that gun. She covers her bleeding husband, throwing her shaking hands up in the air. Leo lets her side, breaking down the brutal matter of the Mafia.
That the crown cannot pass passed down until the king is dead. This leaves you and I with a heavy reminder about devotion. Real love often demands that you put your own fragile life on the chopping block,
just to make sure someone else keep breathing.
Sky, we have seen some broken characters in this underworld, but Serafina is top tier. She does not blink. She stares down the barrel and pitches the coldest trade of the century.
She hits Leo with the ruthless math. She is carrying the only heir. Dorian just leaves a chaotic mess. By capturing her hands Leo the entire kingdom. Leo literally drops his arm. He demands to know shook. Hey, Putin. For the monster. This is just a drama, boss Jinshu. She looks at the bleeding boss who traded his empires for her life, and she holds the line.
We all need to learn something here.
The greatest chapters in life always start the exact you stop, we judgments, run, and finally embrace our ugliest scars.
Let us break down the insane tension of this standoff. She does not scream or talk back. Just look at her eyes. They lock onto Leo with the terrifying focus of a cornered mother.
Her dead silence screams that Dorian's child is not dying today. Leo just stares back, his voice dropping to a creepy, hollow rattle. He does not even care about the mob turf anymore. The dude just wants to vanish, and to pull that off, every loose end has to burn. He yells it in execution and pulls back the hammer. That click drops like a literal guillotine. In that split second, all of Serafina's polite manners absolutely shatter. A pure survival kicks in as her fingers grip a massive brass statue. Here is the lesson for today. Never, ever stand between a desperate mother and the innocent life she is ready to burn the whole world down for. She swings that heavy brass statue, catching Leo right in the temple with a sickening crack. The guy stumbles hard, sending a wild bullet ripping into the ceiling. She lunges to swat the weapon away, but his bloody hand clamps around her ankle, yanking her backward. She hits the floor hard, landing directly on her swollen stomach. The blinding agony hitting her is pure nightmare fuel. But her body is running purely on savage survival mode. Twisting around, she stomps her heel straight into his face, shattering his nose and breaking his grip. Her shaking hands finally find the cold steel of his dropped gun. She rolls over and blasts one fatal shot right into his chest, ending him on the spot. It teaches us a brutally honest truth. Sometimes, simply staying alive means you have to become the exact kind of monster your darkest moments demand. Listen up, because fate loves dealing trash hands in the shadows. Leo is bleeding out on the floor, spending his last pathetic breaths mogging the woman who just ended his run. A few feet away,
Serafina is curled up in absolute agony. Her breathing gets as terrifying shallow. Her body pushed past the breaking point as premature labor hits her like a freight train. Then we have Dorian.
This ruined Mafia boss is literally pressing a hand against a bullet hole in his own chest, using bloody fingers to dial a cracked phone. He stops orders for medics like he still runs a whole syndicate.
The absolute craziest of this scene is clear. Real survival is not just outlasting your enemies.
It is staring at the total wreckage around you, feeling your own life drain out, and finally deciding exactly who is actually worth dying for. You and I need to pause and take in the absolute madness of this setup. Dorian is bleeding out on the cold floor, yet he is still trying to boss the universes around. He promises her she will be fine, trying to forcefully dictate a reality he has zero control over. The irony is completely unhinged. Serafina is drowning in catastrophic trauma, and who does she reach for? The exact same monster who dragged her into this underworld nightmare.
The mobster who ruined her life is suddenly her only safe zone. It is a wild, terrifying look at how we are really wired.
The hard truth is that a massive crisis always burns away the fake idea of independence. When the world is crashing down, our terrified hearts just blindly cling to whoever is closest, even if that person literally built the cage we are stuck inside. Just imagine sitting there for 6 agonizing minutes. When you are bleeding out on cold tile, that wait feels like a twisted eternity. Medics finally rush the room to pull these two apart, but Dorian fights him off like an absolute lunatic. The guy has a hole in his chest, yet he aggressively refuses treatment unless his eyes stay glued to her. The paramedics literally cave to his demands, not because he is a boss, but because she's the only thing keeping his heart pumping. Cut to the chaotic back of the ambulance. Sirens are blaring, and Serafina keeps her limp hand locked in his. His big, scary Mafia facade completely crumbles as he watches the monitors scream over her crashing vitals. And the lesson here hits hard. Being in absolute control is just a pathetic little lie we tell ourselves, right up until reality shows up to collect the tab. Watch this brutal collision right at the bright hospital doors. Dorian spins screaming frantic orders at Serafina to stay awake, treating her fading heartbeat like an enforcer he can still micromanage. Even through blinding agony, she lets out this dark, broken laugh, It is the haunting sound of a mind completely fracturing under armor. The real devastation hits when the doctors physically rip their hands apart, slamming the surgical double doors right in his face. This untouchable underworld kingpin is totally paralyzed by a simple locked door. He completely
Ignores the fatal the blood wound chest, his inability to smash through that glass. Reveals a bitter reality.
The worst pain does not come from physical pain, from being totally let to protect the you swore to keep safe. Physical real finally steps up to collect its brutal toll.
Mass blood loss crashes over Dorian, completely blurring his vision and forcing
the screaming boss into a heavy dark silence. As the trauma team scrambles to pack his bullet wound,
he does not even feel the physical torture. His mind just loops obsessively on one crushing failure.
He could not protect the only thing that actually mattered. Then the scene cuts to Serafina waking up totally alone
under blinding hospital lights. She does not even scream.
She just slowly places a shaking hand on her stomach, feeling the devastating emptiness where her baby used to be. It is a quiet, soul-crushing moment that absolutely rips the air from your lungs.
It teaches us a tough fact about human grief. The worst trauma almost never gets a dramatic movie scream. Usually, it just sits quietly in the dark. You and I need to brace ourselves here.
Because the emotional damage in this scene is absolutely blinding. The very search that I wish that was her.
Pure maternal panic explodes. A nurse nervously reads off the fragile stats. It is a baby boy, barely 4 pounds, locked away inside a plastic incubator. Now watch her reaction closely. Serafina is literally bleeding internally, her own life hanging by a microscopic thread, yet she completely rejects the pain. When doctors order her to stay down, she starts physically fighting them off. Her entire shattered universe shrinks down, finding that infant. The staff tries to hold her back, but medical protocol means absolutely zero to a desperate mother. The crazy beauty of this moment leaves us with a real lesson. When you are terrified for someone you love, your own survival stops mattering entirely. By the time they finally wheel her into the humming Neo wing, her mind is completely tearing at the seams, and then she spots the incubator. The kid is impossibly small.
Just an unfinished life kept going by a brutal maze of plastic tubes.
The hardest pill to swallow
is that thick plastic barrier.
She is not allowed to hold him, getting only the briefest brush of skin. But the very second her fingers slide through that little plastic port, the tiny infant instinctively wraps his microscopic hand right around her finger. That connection, like a 10-ton truck, instantly stopping her to a mental breakdown. That weak little grip becomes her absolute lifeline in this cold, sterile room. It is beautiful, aching proof of our humanity. In our absolute darkest hours, the frailest touch from someone we love is the only anchor keeping us sane. She slumps against that cold plastic box, whispering a fierce command for her boy to just survive. Cut to 4 hours later, and our bleeding boss finally forces his eyes open. True to his completely unhinged nature, Dorian's first moves enabled pure aggressive rebellion. The guy violently rips the IV line straight out of his arm, roaring at these nurses to find his wife and kid like a general commanding troops. When the staff confirms they are actually alive, the massive wave of relief causes monitors to tanks us. Order him back into bed, but he violently refuses to stay put. We are watching a universal truth play out right here. When someone feels totally helpless, they will drag them rather than sit still and drowns it sit still their own terrifying vulnerability. Nurse takes one look at the absolute madness burning in this guy's eyes and wisely just rolls over a wheelchair. Dorian gladly swallows unimaginable physical torture just to get pushed down that hallway. He's driven wild, obsessive need to reclaim his broken family. Their reunion in the baby unit is a breathtaking masterclass in trauma in bonding. They trade broken words of survival in the dim, quiet light. Sarafina looks totally hollowed out, deeply terrified by dangerously fragile their son looks. But Dorian instantly flips the grim script. He looks right at that struggling newborn and declares him a fighter, matching her own brutal resilience. This exposes a really dark reality about human connection. Massive shared suffering does not always push people away. Often, it is the exact tragic superglue needed to lock two completely shattered souls together. Guys, you and I need to pause here, because the emotional whiplash is absolutely wild. When Sarafina calls out his arrogance, Dorian drops the tough guy mob boss act completely. Bro confesses he has zero grand plan, relying purely on ego to stop from freaking out. Anchored in that freezing hospital room, they watch their newborn fight an actual war just to take a single breath. The untouchable Kingpin watches his whole violent world shatter right there on the floor. It is pure poetic justice. Honestly, the guy who built his life off on terror is totally paralyzed by the fear of losing the one kid he actually loves. The lesson here is pretty real. Even the hardest people can be brought to their knees when they finally find something worth losing. Look at how the camera pans the dim nursery and stops dead on Dorian. Naming this nameless kid is straight up psychological warfare. After endless sleepless nights, this ruthless mafia boss down his empire begging for a clean slate. He names the boy Vale, honoring Sapata's bloodline instead of his twisted legacy.
It is a terrifying way
to his Vermitter.
Susample validates her trauma.
A mitigating family gave her the iron Inasa will to survive his toxic tyranny. When she breaks down crying in pure acceptance, the framing captures the absolute peak of a trauma bond. It brings us to a really simple truth about life. Finding genuine peace usually just means we'll have to be crush massive egos and quietly respect this unbreakable strength of the people we once tried to ruin. Step into this suffocating hospital room with me. For 21 agonizing days, this fragile baby is trapped inside a glass box, and their coping mechanisms are completely absurd. We watch Dorian, the feared crime boss in the city, sitting under harsh lights and reading financial spreadsheets out loud like he is running a mob meeting. Beside him, Sarafina relies on raw survival instinct, singing old lullabies to the heart. Inside this bubble, they morph into normal, terrified parents. Meanwhile, outside these walls, his entire criminal empire is getting absolutely crushed by the cops. It highlights a beautiful little lesson about being human. When your whole world is burning to ash, your brain will always find one tiny, fragile thing to fiercely protect. The visual framing of this sequence just drips with tragic irony. Dorian's entire value system has flipped upside down. His loyal hitmen are dead, rivals have ghosted, and the cops are shredding the syndicate he built from scratch. A textbook narcissist would be out on the streets doing crazy damage control. Yet the camera lingers on Dorian, and we realize bro simply does not care at all. He shows zero interest in his burning mafia throne. His massive brain is shrunk down to fit inside one tiny hospital room. On the 22nd day, the exhausted doctors finally declare the kid can breathe on his own. It drops a heavy life lesson right in our laps. All the intimidating empires we spend our lives violently building mean absolutely nothing when a single fragile heartbeat is on the line. Let the camera pause for a scrub brush. A drop of blood left. She's showing my Serafina is rocking the baby.
But if you look at her exhausted eyes, that is not joy. It is just the terrifying hope that nobody is going to die today. The lens pans to Dorian in the doorway.
Staring quietly at the exact golden cage he built, he drops all the brutal Mafia violence that made him a kingpin just to play house sauce. Here is the tragic irony of the setup. Sometimes
our darkest options do not magically disappear. They just put on a cozy sweater and pivot to a quieter target. The life lesson here is chilling. The monsters do not leave the shadows.
They just move right into our living rooms.
Or watch the blocking in this sequence because it is insane. She quietly invites him inside. This terrifying mob boss literally drops like a beaten dog. She actually thanks him.
Do not let that devastating detail slip by. She is looking at the guy who built it, crying yang, tears of gratitude just because he finally decided to stop torturing her. That is the heartbreaking peak of a severe trauma bond. He looks down at the tiny infant, sees his own reflection, and suddenly feels like he belongs. It is enough to make you sick. Yet it completely shatters your heart. The lesson to take away is sounding but true. We spend so much time running from pain. We eventually start confusing the mere absence of violence for actual love and call our darkest cages a home. The cinematic glow fades and reality hits the screen like a freight train. This kid is screaming his lungs out every 2 hours. See, the camera tracks Serafina as she turns into a walking ghost, surviving on pure exhaustion. Savor this heavy visual irony. Dorian, a man who ran an illicit syndicate without blinking, is absolutely terrified of a crying baby. The sheer helplessness crushes his ego way more than a rival mafia gang ever could. In a crazy emotional move, he liquidates his Manhattan empire and burns his criminal network straight to the ground. It is absolute madness. But the simple life lesson shining through all that smoke is undeniable. Sometimes, violently stripping away every ounce of our perceived powers is the only way to figure out who we actually are beneath the heavy armor. Freeze the frame right here on Dorian on the terrace at dusk. Classic narcissist never surrenders without a nape psychological reason. He kept just enough cash to ensure his kid rules the world. But through the violent mafia power away, somehow the hum of this boring domestic life becomes his actual therapy. When the kids sleep, your Serafina is natural to hands him wine. It mimics true love. But it is really just conditioned survival hiding behind a tired smile. He speaks the quiet truth. A year ago, he was a mob god, operating from an iron fortress. Today, his universe is dictated by baby wipes and
feeding schedules. It is a bitter pill for his ego. The simple life lesson is profound. Our truest human evolution usually hides in the incredibly boring,
mundane routines we try so desperately to escape. This is the pivotal scene
where the emotional cards are finally laid out. She asks, her voice trembling, misses being the Underworld king.
He admits he misses the cold certainty of being a monster, because underneath all that brutal power, he was completely empty. Now, the exhausting mess of family life is the only real thing he has ever felt. Serafina rests her head on his shoulder. Right there in the frame, the Stockholm Syndrome visibly hardens into a tragic, permanent reliance. The sky bleeds into a deep purple. The baby sleeps, and they pretend this beautiful lie is normal. It forces us to swallow a very uncomfortable life lesson. The deepest, most unshakable connections we make in this world are often forged in the exact fires that were initially meant to burn us alive. Stick with me,
because watching this shift from a hostage situation to a permanent choice is wild. 1 year later, the camera catches a stark vow renewal on the estate grounds.
Look at the empty space in the frame. There are no glamorous socialites. It's just a sketchy lawyer, a former hitman, and the housekeeper. The baby sleeps is right through this bizarre ritual. For a Mafia boss whose ego used to demand an audience of thousands, his quiet ceremony is a profound visual shock. No grand theatrical declarations. Just two people trying to glue jagged pieces into something resembling a family. The life lesson is universally true. Real commitment is never about grand public gestures. It is about choosing to stay long after the audience is completely gone. Listen closely to the audio mixing as he delivers his vows. His voice is steady, promising to finally look at her as a human being instead of mere mafia property.
He actually thanks her for running away, admitting her sheer terror was the only thing capable of waking his dead conscience.
The camera
Pushes in as Serafina breaks down,
flashing an agonizing smile of total expression. She her conditioned panic, promising to give him space to change. They exchange plain gold bands, throwing away their history of flashy luxury. When they kisses, it is not romantic. It is desperate, like two people drowning in a dark ocean, clinging to each other for one last frantic breath. The lesson is undeniable. Profound vulnerability, even when born from absolute trauma, can become our most defining truth. Let's wrap this up by panning to the guests, because the cinematic irony is painfully thick. When the baby cries, Serafina soothes him. Dorian reflexively wraps a heavy arm around her waist, marking his territory while thanking his former hitman for letting them pretend to be a normal family. Silas raises a glass to second chances, and the twisted choir echoes the vibe. They stand in the bright sunlight, eating cake, drinking booze, and collectively agreeing to bury the severe psychological violence that brought them together. It is an absolute masterpiece of human denial. The lifeless lesson in this final frame is chilling. Sometimes survival requires us to build a beautiful wall of delusion, because facing the stark reality of what we actually survived would completely tear us apart. You and I need to stop right here and unpack this absolute madness. The room is dead quiet, just the fire popping. So Serafina pulls out this old, crumpled letter she wrote back when she was desperately trying to escape this guy. Dorian asks if he should read it. She just shakes her head, walks right up to the fire, and tosses it in. Bro, she is straight up torching her own anger because the truth would shatter their fake bubble. Dorian watches her burn the very last shred of her independence, stepping in close and swearing he's a changed man now. The life lesson here is brutal but real. Sometimes we basically destroy the most honest parts of ourselves. Just hang on to the people we are absolutely terrified of losing.
Watch the mastermind manipulation happening right here. The big boss plays the perfectly, whispering that he still does not know if he is a good man. Boom.
Her heavy conditioning kicks in, and she immediately comforts him. He pulls her tight into his chest, locked into this wildly toxic dependency. Then, bam, we skip 5 whole years into the future. They have a kid running around the yard, totally clueless about the dark mafia drama he was born out of. Serafina just wiped her brain clean of the past,
showing how the human mind will literally rewrite its history just to survive the day. It leaves us with a pretty heavy life lesson. Our most massive,
defining transformations are almost as never the world oft was known to the Bovat were most.
The second that letter hit the fire, her old sidekick, so the guy who kept her captive, do not think for a second he lost his god complex. He just took that intense mob boss energy and dumped it straight into the playground. Now he is a controlling super dad who coaches Little League and cooks fancy meals.
He traded hitting targets for bedtime stories, but that obsession with absolute dominance is still wide awake. It is just wearing an apron now. They even have a daughter and a son named Silas.
Get this. She named the kid after the lawyer who tried to help her escape. What a crazy tribute to her lost freedom. The lesson here is sharp.
You can always swap out your daily uniform, but your core nature is never actually going to change its shape. Their massive mansion turns into a crazy terrarium for this unhinged family experiment. Rose is not just on the payroll anymore. She slides right into the grandma role. Out in the yard, the dead gardens are brought back to life, perfectly mirroring how these two stitched their broken brains back together. Inside this bubble, Serafina reaches her final boss form. She stops acting like a hostage and fully leans into playing the proud survivor who won the war.
Obviously, they still cannot lock two damaged people in a house without sparks flying.
But somehow they hammer out this deeply twisted version of peace. It drops a sobering life lesson right in our laps. People do not actually need a healthy, normal reality to survive. They just need a shared delusion that they can blindly agree to. Look at this final frame, because the body language is screaming at us. He wraps his arms around her waist in a total ownish move, asking what is on her mind. She sighs, relieved they survived the mob chaos, wondering what would have happened if she never ran. His reply is absolute ice. He claims they would have destroyed each other. She tries to flex, saying her epic escape saved them. He shuts that down instantly, telling her that crawling back to him was the real victory. And her reaction? She just leans back, completely confusing heavy exhaustion with actual peace. It hits us with a wild life lesson.
The true winner of any brutal war is never the person
Who throws the first punch. It is the guy who gets to write the history books when the dust finally settles. Freeze the video right. Check out how well cozy this room looks.
Outside the fireplace is glowing red. Upstairs, the kids are fast asleep.
Totally clueless that the hands tucking them in actually belong to calculating mob predators. They are dreaming inside a massive lie. Guarded by two unhinged who completely shredded each other before gluing the pieces back together. Look at the leaf melting off his shoulders as he pulls her in. For these two damaged souls, this deeply tragic compromise is exactly what salvation looks like. It drops one last hard truth on us to think about. Sometimes, the only real peace you are ever going to get is the quiet little sanctuary you manage to build right on top of the ashes of your own violent past. The final lesson from the story is about redemption and the slow rebuilding of trust. Dorian begins as emotionally cold, controlling, and dismissive. He treats Serafina as part of a strategy rather than as a partner. However, after she leaves, after enemies threaten her, and after he nearly loses her, he begins to confront the damage he caused. His confession of love in the warehouse is dramatic, but the story wisely suggests that one declaration is not enough. Serafina does not instantly forget the loneliness, humiliation, and fear she experienced. She tells him that they will need a long conversation about trust, the baby, and their future. This is one of the most educational parts of the story, because it shows that change must be proven over time. Apologies are important, but they are only the beginning. Real transformation requires consistent behavior, respect for boundaries, and the willingness to give the injured person time. Dorian S. promised to earn Serafina S. trust manners. May finally understands that love cannot be commanded. He cannot buy it, nyanate it into existence, or force it through power. He must become worthy of it. This lesson is valuable for viewers because many stories portray love as something that instantly fixes harm. In reality, emotional wounds need accountability and repeated proof of change. Serafina's strength lies in the fact that she can acknowledge Dorian's growth without surrendering her judgment. She may still care for him, but she also knows trust is fragile. The educational message is balanced and mature. People can change, but no one is owed instant forgiveness. Love becomes healthier when it includes responsibility. A better future is possible only when both people choose honesty, humility, and respect. Serafina's journey teaches that forgiveness, if it comes, should never erase the lesson learned from pain.